We've got about 5 minutes for questions, if there's any questions. I see some over here on the right-hand side, left-hand side, depending on which way you're looking.
Hi, my name is Alexis Bonagovsky, and I am a landowner from Billings, Montana, who was impacted by the 2011 Exxon oil spill. I hope I'm one of the only people in here who have had to deal with that personally. So I feel like we're going through deja vu here a little bit, because you rarely hear about the human element. This is all very technical, and it was very interesting to learn about. But people make decisions, and after the Exxon oil spill in 2011 on my property, Glendive, Montana had an oil spill, and I hear the same thing after every oil spill. There's lessons to be learned. We had the same lessons after the Billings oil spill as they said in Glendive, and nothing changed in 4 years. So my question is, how do we learn those lessons better? How do we take all of this great data, this great information, and say, we're not going to let these same mistakes happen, because people on the ground are very impacted by this, and no one, to go through an oil spill and then 4 years later have the same thing happen with the same problems, and then have the same people say we need to learn lessons, it's very frustrating. And so my question is, how do we learn those lessons better? How do we take this information, take it on the ground, and not just do like one training here or one training there, but actually make sure that this information gets into the culture of corporations, the culture of our agencies, and the culture of the public?
Who wants to take that one?
Sure, thank you for that question. I'll describe some of the liquids pipeline actions that we're taking, and I'll refer to some of the actions at PHMSA and Congress as well. Certainly the incidents that happened in Montana, one was too many, and then we had a second, and it really brought home the need to do better with river crossings, and we saw one had ice bound as well. And there's a number of things that are going on right now to address those, attack that problem. One thing we have is industry-wide guidance for liquid operators on how to manage their river crossings when the pipe goes through a riverbed. And historically, that guidance was more towards constructing new crossings. And we took a look at that, and we said we really need to build that out to manage and maintain existing crossings, make sure they're protected. If they need to be drilled underneath, that's done. And API will be, actually the executives of the companies met this summer to review this issue and made it a industry-wide strategic initiative to improve upon this guidance to deal with surveying of crossings, assessing the crossings and their characteristics, mitigation of crossings if need be, and then continuous monitoring thereafter. And each crossing is different. Some are trenches. The one in Billings, I was there this summer, it's actually in bedrock. So that one is fine, but others, the boundaries shift, and so they perhaps need to be directionally drilled. One Montana-specific example, Senator Daines, your senator from Montana, has language in a current draft to improve pipeline safety oversight. He has language taking a look at real-time monitoring and making sure pipeline operators are doing a better job of monitoring. One similar provision in that same bill is from Senator Peters of Michigan to ensure that operators are considering ice and ice-covered water or shoreline when they do their emergency response planning, so that they're better prepared for that. And then I'll touch on briefly, and Alan can follow up. There's language in the PHMSA proposed hazardous liquid rulemaking that was released in October to have operators get in and inspect their facilities within 72 hours after a major weather event, whether it's a hurricane or a flood or some other kind of event. So there's a lot of good things going on, and hopefully through those good things we'll be doing a lot better in the future.
If I could, I would just add.
We're out of time, so short answer and one more question.
from the regulator standpoint, I mean, obviously, first off, we took action or take action with the operator, take it seriously. Those are unacceptable. So certainly that's one aspect. We also have spent a good bit of time in Montana, I know specifically, to work with operators to assess the river crossings up there and worked closely with the governor's office. I would say, too, a number of policy initiatives that we're working on that would target that. Certainly, John mentioned the hazardous liquid rule that's out as a proposed rule right now. We're also looking at other rulemaking, for instance, on rupture detection and valves that I really can't say much about because we're working on that and hope to issue that before too long, but that's another one I think that would, I know will address that issue there. There's other efforts in R&D. Our R&D program is keenly aware, and through our collaborative process, we've identified areas that we need to dedicate R&D resources to improve performance of pipelines, and that would help that certainly in the aftermath of those incidents up there. Thanks.
Okay, last question.
So Beth Wallace, I'm a board member of the trust. So you mentioned a lot of factors. You mentioned data, population, Alan mentioned population, but something that was glaringly missing, and I think Alexis was kind of hitting on this, is environmental factors and coupling that with aging infrastructure and how we were placing some of the aging infrastructure then and how we're doing it now, and is there ways to better evaluate whether a pipeline in very hazardous situations, high consequence areas situations, should actually even exist in those areas. And I think that was the point of the conversation for me, and I felt like the environmental factors was kind of missing out of this conversation, and you're mentioning some of them now, but I think they need to kind of elevate up in the conversation moving forward. And the data is great, but looking more holistically at all of the issues.
All right. Wasn't an exact question, but I bet we have a comment.
No, I appreciate that. Now, you know, I probably glossed over that too much, and I apologize for that, but certainly when I considered issues, and the top one I listed or had listed there was public and personal safety and the environment, but certainly that's a factor on, okay, if something were to happen, what would the impact be? That needs to be a consideration as you look at the vintage of pipe, as you look at the other factors that were listed there, like the type of pipe, the seam type, the cathodic protection, the condition of the pipe related to, okay, if something were to happen, what would be the impact? So that would factor in. So I just didn't cover it in detail.
All right, we need to move on. I brought up Wendy's graph because I want to ask her a question about it. If anybody wants to hear what I want to ask, come on up, but we're going to let you get off to lunch so we can get back and finish up today. We're going to try to return from lunch at, I wrote it down here somewhere, 1:45. So thank you very much, and these folks are around if you have questions about their presentations. Thank you.